Central Business District Committee to order. So first item on the agenda, committee goals for calendar year 2025. Is that something that we have or something that we need?
Certainly have a specific goal in mind. It's kind of what you guys want,
Yes.
want the committee to be.
So I think it almost kind of overlaps with item B, the recap of the current activities and focuses. I'm just curious, because Casey and I are coming into this committee, obviously with background knowledge from watching the previous meetings, but with maybe some just questions about what have been some of the focuses or the current activities that have been important to the committee and things that we want to make sure we kind of start with as far as like paying our attention to certain items.
Okay. Yeah, so a lot of, since Andrew left, a lot of our meetings were consumed with the facade grant.
Right.
Prior to that, we were discussing kind of like beautification efforts and what we considered a priority for uplifting downtown. And we seem to talk a lot about like art, which is also kind of associated with the Public Arts Advisory Board, which brought in the mural also. So we looked at some of the mural submissions at the time, which the board has selected a winner. Kind of that kind of needs to be explained a little more because the property owner,
Put the process down.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that might take a little more time.
Right.
So
And the, so art and beautification, I know there's a separate committee or group that has started with the, arcade, the structure, farmer's market structure,
yes.
which I think would be relevant for this committee's purview as well,
Yeah.
to fall underneath of. And we've had one meeting,
Yes.
I guess that was officially last year. Yes, that was officially
Yes.
last year.
Yes. And
But
our
I know
next
it's
one's
another this
next
month, right?
week.
Yeah,
Next week.
right. So that's another piece that I think is important to how it informs this committee as well. And that process only just got started at the end of last year.
Yes, which is also based on the drainage
Right.
project. So we're kind of trying to base the timeline on that, which also happens that the drainage project, they have their meetings the same day that we do, but we made ours a little later now so that people can engineering something in that. So we actually might have an update on the drainage project.
Okay.
One other thing, if it's okay, that I'd like to add to the conversation is how we move forward with this committee and our small business development position. What that looks like, I think, we had kind of gotten that started before and now we're sort of redirecting a little bit and we have a new person in that position. So what types of communication Miles would have with the group, what types of liberties he would carry on separate from the group and expectations, of things to bring and things that he's good to just go ahead and communicate on his own. Previously, we had worked to develop a series of virtual meetings for all of the businesses across town. And the previous council members who were in this group, I think, I'm not sure, one or both, felt like that was something that needed to come before central business first. We felt like it didn't. So just some direction on what you guys would like to see as far as that communication.
I don't know if I can draw a clear line, just not knowing what that list of activities is, but my instinct would be to conduct the businesses that fall within the job range, like the job title, like whatever those responsibilities are that you're hired to do, complete them and then just report back to us on how it's going and then we can sort of learn where that line, like,
Okay.
I do agree, like, I don't
Yeah,
see like a particular line.
Yeah, I agree with that as long as you all know, like, if that's clear what those parameters currently look like.
Yeah.
If there's still questions, and that might be sort of what you're getting at a little bit.
Yeah, maybe part of it is just that we're kind of planning things, and if there are bigger things that we feel maybe need a second look, we'll bring them to you. Also, like, for instance, Miles and I had talked about doing this one day symposium. And Miles has a great idea and thoughts behind that, but it would be a sort of a bigger picture thing. So maybe running that to you all and seeing if that's, maybe we'll just kind of move forward with that. And then as we get to know each other better and see how the relationships are within his position, then that might change.
Yeah, and then if there's a question about, should this come to the committee, we could just take an email.
Sure.
Make a
Okay.
Quick judgment call. How often, so this committee has met monthly in the past, right? And then,
It's basically been as needed. Obviously, some of the committees have regular schedules. This one, I guess, is had a monthly, basically a monthly meeting, although it's the date shifting.
gotcha.
But really, however often you would meet, if you want to have established date, that's fine. If you'd like to meet basically as needed, that's fine too. So
Our website established the Wednesday after the second council meeting
Right.
as the semi-regular day, but it was still listed as an as needed.
Okay.
Yeah, I like a steady meeting cadence and then we can just cancel if nothing's going on, but just thinking about these projects, like, these are all things that I think would be helpful to have regular updates or at least us to touch base on. So maybe we just we go ahead and put it on the calendar for that second Wednesday after,
The Wednesday after the second.
okay, the Wednesday after the second council meeting, yeah. So we can go ahead and
Right.
establish that and make that work, unless we think that's gonna overlap with work sessions. In which case we could just pick another Wednesday.
Yeah, so that would then begin next month, right, after the second council meeting in March.
Mhm.
Are y'all comfortable with 4 PM?
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
And then you guys don't have to.
it's Wednesday after the Wednesday.
Starting next month. I think another thing for this committee to review is, I know in the past, there's been a lot of back and forth about the purview of the committee geographically for what is downtown Cambria versus all of Christiansburg. So having consensus on, what we are, or I should say, where we are addressing, I think is also, a good definition to either change or continue to use what the previous committee had addressed.
Give you, I guess, a little history on that. It was called the Central Business District Committee when I came here. And it had been that basically for decades. And at that point, it looked really exclusively at the downtown.
Right.
Downtown Christiansburg.
Like historic, district.
Correct.
Yeah.
When Marissa Sykes was on the committee, she wanted to expand that to include Cambria, and council agreed with that. It actually did do maps of areas that they considered the footprint of those, and we have those if you want to see those. And like I say, that's kind of been the historical focus. I'd say it has been, I guess, more expanded recently.
Right.
But you can, like I say, I think it's again kind of up to you on what focus area you want to look at.
Yeah.
If you want us to dig out those maps of downtown Christiansburg and downtown Cambria, we certainly can. But
Yeah, I mean, Tanya, I'd love to get your opinion. I sort of think bringing the scope back to those two historic districts, those commercial districts are the most important, especially with how we talk about passenger rail coming in as well, and sort of then the focus of these two historic districts being priority number one, if not exclusively what the committee addresses. I think given where we are, that might be prudent of us to realign with those two districts, if that's something that makes sense to everybody.
That's me.
So realign with downtown historic district and Cambria.
But I think we need to recognize too, there might be times where there's some overlap, like
Agreed.
program, and it's not like we didn't pay any attention to those other areas that they make sense to come to the committee, but that'll be our new focus.
Right.
Can I send you all some wording for our, sheet that we have that lists all the committees with some
Sure.
new language that kind of says commitment to all businesses, but localized effort and,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. Anything else on committee goals? I mean, I know we need to establish some goals, but I feel like this helps us to frame our focus. Awesome.
I think, yeah, I think those are kind of the broad brush strokes, and then we can think about what goals are gonna form from those, yeah.
And I think that also kind of includes a recap of current activities and focuses, unless besides the facade grant, is there any sort of like open activity that we need to keep on the radar? That hasn't already been mentioned?
Did the Launch Christiansburg program previously come through here? Do you know? Do you know? There was no conversation?
Yeah, because I think because it was open to all residents within Christiansburg. It may have been like discussed about like the programs happening, but it didn't come here for approval or for how it would be run.
Would it be appropriate, since that is one of our bigger programs at this time, for there to be some discussion? Maybe it's not approval, maybe it's guidance and more of that discussion
Mhm.
just on how we can reach all businesses, and then with our new sort of realigned focus of downtown to see if there's anything we can do to better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so,
Okay.
yeah. And that's something, I mean, Christina, I know that you took over in an interim, that's something Miles is now I mean, in the next phases, you're starting to wrap your hands around, right, in terms of what that looks like going forward?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we learned a lot. Daria luckily had started with the previous position, and so she really was the one pulling me in
Right.
on everything that was going on. But being that was our first year and we were just very much winging it in a lot of ways, we learned a lot. So we have some changes and some thoughts, but I think that bringing it to the group would be a good place to kind of iron out some details and perspective on how we want to move forward. Okay.
Great.
And then something that is just probably built into stuff we've already discussed, I think, is the importance of what we can do to generate interest in opening businesses downtown. I think that there's a little bit of crossover, Miles, maybe with you in understanding what the open retail spaces are. I think we've talked a little bit about this, but like, what are the open retail spaces in downtown Christiansburg and in Cambria? And can we, do we have a list of the owners of those spaces, and what incentives are other towns using to help bring in, like, attract types of businesses that they want in downtown? So I think that would be something really important for us to focus on in this committee. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe associated with that, bringing the planning into play, zoning wise, so,
Mhm.
kind of the eligibility for multi-use in the downtown where it could be for housing as well, because there are incentives to do that. And we talked to Jennifer Wilson, with the regional commission about that and maybe some future funding opportunities.
And that seems like something, ever since at least I was in staff over here, we've talked about to some degree of like, what can you rezone? How do you do it? What incentives are there to those property owners to encourage those vacancies to become, with vibrant retail as occupied? So, but I know that's been discussed before, and I think it's just never, I don't know to what degree we really ever got, sunk our teeth into that. But so I'd like to have that as a discussion that's brought back up again.
Have, I guess, a vacancy in the inventory before.
Right.
Yeah.
It's trying to work to update.
Right.
I am currently working on getting that up to date.
Okay,
And I'll work with Dayton to get GIS information for the owners for the properties.
perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect.
And it's a big lift.
And then the other thing I would add, I know, maybe we also at least just keep passenger rail as its own tracking item within this committee, especially because we just committed the 30 grand, right, needed for the ARC planning grant, right, that we're, associated with, so, using, I think that as a tracking item, for this committee to always check in, if nothing else, might also be a helpful something, item to keep coming back to.
And then what's been this committee's relationship with special events in downtown and those applications? Any relationship? Any need for one?
That they made recommendation to basically expand the event programs that we've had downtown, and that's part of the reason we're doing the Roger Main. That kind of came as a recommendation from this committee many years ago.
I know council's had questions about like making sure everyone gets the information about events, like all the businesses downtown get the information and the certified, which I know is something that's
We
already.
fixed that.
I know. Is there anything that this committee can do to like gut check any of that stuff or should do?
One thing I'm wondering, just sort of thinking out loud, we've had a lot of conversations specifically around Rocking Main and we've alternated those to different ends of town so that they can give both ends of Main Street or both businesses on both ends of Main Street opportunities to capitalize and leverage the event for their business and whatever that looks like. I'm wondering,
I'll say, yeah, sharing the benefit and pain a little bit too.
Yeah.
Some of that.
yeah, I'm wondering, I don't know what it would look like, but if the committee would have an opinion on, or maybe a way to solidify that our special events committee is right in moving forward with how we are alternating on each end.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, cool. Okay, I know I said, oh, it sounds like everything, but then I have more things, so.
Good problem.
All right, anything else in that before we jump to facade grants, which I know will take up a bit of our time?
I guess the one other thing I'll add, and this is, I think it's somewhat related, but it also sort of has iterations perhaps in other committees or commissions with the town. We had an email that I totally overlooked a while back about talking about MC 250.
Yes.
And I think there's relevancy actually to this committee in particular, particularly for what takes place downtown,
Mhm.
that we can sort of build up on. I don't know what that looks like yet,
Mhm.
but, that's something that I feel like in some way would intersect with this committee, particularly with how Christiansburg and downtown chooses to
Take part in that.
celebrate, particularly with how we historically have done so,
Mhm.
over at the 200th. So
Mhm.
anyway, just something I know you had brought that up a couple months
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah, I just canceled a meet.
Yeah,
tell you about
so
that?
that's what reminded me about it.
I
So,
forgot about it too. I saw
so-
it come up and I was like, what is
Yeah,
this? Yeah.
but no time to present to maybe start thinking about
Sure.
it,
Okay.
we can pick up on particularly whatever the county is doing in conjunction with what takes place in Christiansburg. So we
Sure.
can fill in more on that too.
Okay.
Just keeps going.
Yeah.
All right.
One more thing
Yeah.
from planning, that there are gonna be some things in our comprehensive plan that's currently under draft that will have to do with the downtown and Cambria districts, whether it's revitalizing or maintaining growth or multi-use structures and stuff like that. So once we have more than a draft, that'll be probably something you'll want to be clued in on too.
Awesome, thank you.
Which also reminds me, the study that was done by the regional commission, was it a feasibility study done, Randy, I don't know, 3-4 years ago now? I can't remember what the plan was actually called. Some sort of
Placemaking plan.
placemaking plan, thank you. Like, I'd like to see that dusted off the shelf and revisited, because I just don't know that ever got the time it deserved, and I think there's still a lot to extrapolate from that plan that could be revisited. Maybe not, but we don't know until we pull it back out and look at it. So that would be another thing to revisit. Thank you, Chris.
You'll have that.
What?
Website.
It's on your website.
I know, but you all have.
Oh, I mean, I've seen it before, yeah.
It's in that council folder.
Yes, okay,
under
right, right,
plans.
right. So. I know I might need a refresher on it. I mean, I remember the origins of it and where we started, but I just think there's still relevancy to it.
I'll send you all a link to it on the website.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna move us to the item C, facade grant program discussion. So I know we're wrapping the last round of facade grant program awards. And I have some thoughts on improving the program, but I don't want to necessarily start with like what to improve. I kind of want to start with what's been the timeline. And is that timeline working? I think it would be good to build the timeline that we want to have for this year.
Mhm.
And then make like schedule our actions and our discussions around like how quickly we need to achieve things to stick to our timeline to make sure that we're awarding people, in a timely manner and that we're in the budget year that things need to be in. So all that to say, can we start with just what's the timeline historically for the facade grant program, or do we need to establish?
So this past year was a little bit different, which is the one that I've been involved in, because of the, staffing change.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just kind of tried to do it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
As far as previous years, do you know what has usually been?
I think the money previously had to be expended by the end of May, but they've extended that through the end of June.
Yeah, for this one.
This year.
Because of that. So I think it's kind of based on what you all are wanting to do, especially since we're gonna go through it and try to hammer out the details of
Mhm.
some changes that might benefit
Mm-hmm.
the town.
Okay.
Did
Did the funds need to be expended within this fiscal
I
year?
think it's actually by June first is when they. Sure, that's correct.
Okay. And is that because the funds need to be expended within that fiscal year?
I think the thought is that they were submitted by the first of June. That would still give us time to have it included in that fiscal year, coded and included in that fiscal year budget.
Right.
In all honesty, if you extended that to like the 15th or something, you'd probably be okay.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay, so I would like to work backwards from that timeline. We don't necessarily, I guess, need to do that at this meeting, but I would like to have a timeline that we stick to each year of when the applications open, how long that period of accepting them is, how long the review period is, the announcement. Like, I would like all of those milestone activities organized into some kind of like a plan of action that follows the timeline so that we are sticking with that. And, we can obviously extend things as needed, but I would really like us to have a timeline of like, these are the deadlines, the milestones for this program. And I would like to make sure that in those milestones that the businesses have like at least 6 months. And I think that's what's on the website, 6 months to complete the project.
So the applications were supposed to be due September 30th of 2024. And then they needed to have the work completed by June 1st, 2025.
Got it.
So 6 months.
So if we work backwards from 6 months to between award, so awarding them by, January 1? That full 6 months, or it'd have to be December 1? December 1? You know what I mean?
You could change the program timeline so that you make the award at the end of the year, but it's and it could actually be for the next fiscal year.
Yeah.
I mean, if you wanted to handle it.
Is there benefits to doing that?
You'd be giving them a longer period of time than to give them the whole fiscal year to do it.
Which it seems like in past experience, many of them have needed
More than-
more time, right? Right, I mean, it seems like a lot of times they are slow to the gate.
Six months is a tight time frame when you consider half of it's winter.
Right,
So
Yeah,
Right.
that's fair. That's a very good point.
yeah.
So, is that something you guys can work on for the next meeting? Maybe we can pass it by email so we can think about it before, is that okay?
Yeah,
Let's think about a timeline that gives business owners the most, like the max amount of time to access the funds, but gives us enough time to review, make comments, provide them some support. One thing I'd like to see considered is, technical assistance for applicants. Do we do that?
we do, and some of that would be like the drawing that's done by the artist
Okay.
with the rendering.
That's what I was wondering. I wasn't sure if we did technical assistance, but if we could do like, yeah, design consultations and support, it sounds like we already are. And I don't know if there's any sort of like like a workshop for folks who are interested. I don't want to pile on a bunch of work. Maybe that's not worth it. Maybe there's not enough interest, but if there's like a way to provide the businesses with information about like, here's what to expect, here's how it works. Like, you're not gonna be in this alone. Like, we want you to have an opportunity to feel comfortable with the process, brainstorm what those ideas might be, have technical assistance and really lay the process out. And maybe it already exists in some other communication.
No, I think that is a great idea. Miles and I have talked about that, and I think he can really help with that. I
Mhm.
think, when you're talking about technical assistance, he's not gonna create the renderings, but this is a person that, as long as we keep him looped in on these meetings and the process, he's already having so much direct contact and communication with our local businesses. And I wasn't a part of the process before this, but just hearing about who we have awarded them to and that those were the best applicants, it made me wonder if now with Miles already building such strong relationships, if we couldn't have a better pool of applicants that are local, more local businesses in the way that I think the program was intended to help with bringing him into the conversation.
Yeah.
And doing a different way of marketing from my department's end and how we're reaching potential businesses to take advantage of it, because I just think there are more people that we could be reaching if they better understood, and maybe it was simplified a little bit for them, and Miles can do that.
Yeah. I like
I could stand a little guidance on their applications, because a few of them submitted things that weren't, at least elements that weren't eligible, things like that, like painting.
Yeah. I would love to see us create, because like looking at the application, I mean, it needs an update, there's not a question there that asks them to confirm that they meet the eligibility criteria, which I think the eligibility criteria is okay. And I don't necessarily have any changes to that, but like, I don't think the application asks them to confirm the eligibility criteria straight out the gate. So what work is our staff having to do to go back and verify that they're eligible and they fit the criteria? So if we ask them those questions on the application and we provide them like an application packet that summarizes whatever might be in that workshop or that communication to say, here's what's eligible, here's the type of work you can request, here's how to make your application strong, and explain to them how we're going to score it, which we'll talk about next. But I think it just sets people up for the most success, especially because these are probably small business owners who don't really know how to
Right.
approach this, or even what to think of when they're trying to design their
Right.
facade.
And once you all decide how the program's gonna look, we can go to town with that. We can make that very easy to read and digestible, and yes.
Because a
yeah.
lot of them did disqualify themselves
Yeah.
because they did the work prior to
right,
applying.
Yeah.
And so, that,
yeah.
We could do a good job of explaining that. I know that we can.
Yes.
And especially if we take those lessons learned.
Yeah, I think go ahead. I'm sorry.
okay, well, I was just gonna say, and if there's a certain criteria that they need to meet as far as the age of the building,
Mhm.
um,
Right,
because right now it's 50 years.
right.
We went back and made sure that that building fit into that. However, one of them, when we did that, said that it was 50 years old, but it wasn't specifically that building that was 50 years old. There was something there, and Stacy Martin knew it because he was on the selection committee. He knew that, but nobody else, you probably would have known, but you know,
Yeah.
that's something that's not general knowledge that somebody would normally
Great.
talk to him.
I think the more we treat this as like a traditional grant, the better off I think we're going to be in sort of what the outreach looks like. And I remember Andrew and I talking about, you know, the application needs to, you know, require that they submit a budget, you know, and, you know, itemize what it is, the work that they're doing and, you know, looking through what's eligible. So, I mean, really spelling that out in terms of, you know, required attachments and having a pre-workshop, you know, all of these things that, again, they just don't, this is not their, if, you know, in looking at it like it's a grant, that's most small business owners don't know how to do that or haven't before. So,
Yep.
you know, I think we just need to treat it like that, but, you know, kind of walk them through that process, and create these attachments and require documentation.
And on that line, I think we need to develop some strong scoring criteria. And we need to consider that there will be applications who maybe are eligible, but just don't score highly on like the criteria that we're scoring, right? There's a list of things that we're looking for on the website, the types of projects that are eligible, like, and there's a list of objectives that we want to accomplish with the program. And I think we need to align the scoring of the applications with our objectives. And those applications that are really strongly meeting our objectives for the program, score those higher, right? With a specific number value of meeting or exceeding or not meeting those expectations, like that align with our objectives. And if they don't score a certain score, then we don't consider them for funding because they're not aligned to our objectives. Their projects might be just fine, but if they're not aligning to our objectives of what the facade grant program is for, like the purpose of the program, then they just don't score enough. You know, there's a threshold of scoring and you've got to meet and exceed this threshold. And that's what the workshops will help them do, is to bring to us something that, you know, an application that helps them meet the purpose of the grant. Does that make sense? And then when everyone is scoring, we can score them individually, tally those scores and pool whatever that number is. I mean, and then it's very straightforward. Who did the best? If they are at a certain threshold, maybe there's a certain amount of funding that they receive, or maybe if they meet this threshold, then they receive whatever it is they're requesting, whatever that might be. But I think it would help us do a better job of choosing who receives a grant, and the people applying for the grant do a better job of writing an application that meets our expectations. You know what I mean? So that is what I would like to see us do. Better, like, updated form with a complete application package. That's the piece for the business owners, and then internally, some scoring mechanisms, which I've got some brainstormed ideas, but if you guys want to take that, I can share ideas, and then maybe you guys can pull together the score sheet and you can just make sure all this is in line. Does that sound?
Yeah, and I think we can take, I mean, there's the score sheet, the rubric that we've used in the past, I think it definitely needs some revisions, but there's some pieces of it I think that can remain intact too, from my memory of it. So if we can update that document as a starting point, I think then we can see what else we need to consider at that point.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
And then, and then another question I have is, do we have a post-award feedback for? You know, and I guess what I mean by that is like after the award is over, whether they did or didn't do the work, we follow up after the period of performance is over and ask them, you know, did you accomplish the work? If not, why not? Like, just to learn a little bit more about if they didn't accomplish their work, was it because they ran out of time? Did they have unanticipated like budget impacts? You know what I mean?
You did that with Lunch Christians,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure if you all did that with the facade grant, but we're happy to create something for you.
I mean, it doesn't have to be overly complicated.
Sure.
It would be nice to hear from the folks who have had a facade grant and completed the work and haven't completed the work. because I think their feedback could help us improve the program. And make some changes to the timeline and
Yeah.
the guidance that we give them. And we would know what was helpful for them. But, you know, we make that a requirement of if you do receive a grant, then you also agree to do this, like, I don't know what the word is, like exit
Survey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exit survey of administering the grant.
Sure, and that's how we did it with Launch Christiansburg. I think that it was required
So we did a,
beginning,
Course
middle.
beginning, we did like some milestones in the middle, and then we had a final survey that was like about the course material and the process. And then co-starters who we did the course through, they had an exit survey after the pitch and everything was completed.
But was
And-
something required? Like, did we say you can't do this until you complete the survey, or am I making?
I
that
mean,
up?
we required them at that last meeting to complete
Okay.
the survey.
So like in person,
They
yeah.
couldn't leave until they completed it.
But we can include that on the application, like by signing here, you agree to blah, 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 and complete a post-award survey if
Yeah.
awarded.
Yeah.
We did have that on Launch Christiansburg where they agreed by participating in the program that they did a survey, like up to 3 years after the program. So like a year post, 2 years post, and 3 years post.
Yeah. So Brett, if you guys want to include that on the application, then we can work on a survey and create it for you.
Does all of this make sense? Like, do you see how this is coming, like, I see in my mind how I think it could come together, but does this make sense? This, what gaps are we leaving with adjusting these things? I think updating eligibility criteria could be a potential
Yeah.
gap.
I think on the front end, you know, the part about education and promotion is gonna be huge, just because I think in years past, the small pool of applicants has been in part because I think a lot of small businesses just don't think that, this is not for me, you know, well, I think mostly just like the eligibility piece, right? They just don't realize that they could actually apply for it in the first place.
Right.
So if we can really hone in on that, then I think we're gonna see those numbers go up drastically. So it's just that
Do
education.
we spotlight the businesses that we want grants to, like in our newsletter or whatever, when they complete their projects? Hey, this business was, you know, awarded a facade grant. we spotlighted it.
But we did with what was it, the Chandlery?
We didn't.
Or we did and then we didn't.
They're on the
Right?
advertisement for that.
We
Okay.
didn't.
Okay.
It's not like that, but like a picture of like an example of that.
So there have been feelings, it is very, very complicated how we work with businesses but aren't advertising for businesses or showing
Sure,
them.
that
So,
makes sense.
so when we were advertising for the facade grant, not this go around because we weren't pulled in the communication as much. I think some things just fell through the cracks because we had 2 key people that were involved in it that left. So the timing, you know,
Yeah.
they did what they could do. And, but before that, there was a lot of conversation around some of the marketing materials that my department created because we wanted to show examples of the businesses, some of the businesses that had benefited. So we put together, I did a video
Yeah.
that showed all of the, and I think most of the places who had benefited. And then we did a postcard that showed multiple places that had benefited, and we sent them out to business owners who we thought would be eligible for future. But there was some frustrations expressed because it was felt that we shouldn't be highlighting specific businesses. But we can't show the work that was done without showing the business. So I personally felt like it was okay and we ended up doing it.
Right.
And it was fine, but that is just a little history.
It's not so, my thought was not so much focused on the business, but focused on their experience with the facade group. Showing what they were able to accomplish by working with us for that, and then, you know, like you talked about how they agreed to do a straight interview,
Mhm.
whatever, just kind of including that and whatever.
Maybe just a-
So showing that project.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Or specific, like if we're able to take pictures, I don't wanna get into the weeds, but take pictures of the work.
You know, I mean, I wouldn't be too worried. I mean, I think, you know, showing is telling here, and I think you wanna have, to some degree, you wanna have video or pictures or something, right? That is gonna say, here's what this money can help you
Right.
accomplish.
Here's the
Almost
before
like
and
another
here's the
benefit
after.
So-
of
Yeah,
line.
And that's one thing we had talked about too, before and after. We
Right.
haven't done that in our marketing, because I've only been here one, besides last year, which I don't count, but the one kind of cycle of the facade grant. But we had talked about showing before and after, so if, you know, this was, the chandlery
Mhm.
before,
yeah,
what it looks like being part of the facade grant.
right,
Like that.
yeah.
But as long as we have the support of this committee, then I'll do
Yeah.
whatever you want.
No, I mean, I think that's gonna be compelling to see, you know, for folks to be able to say, okay, this is what I can do.
Sure.
So,
All right.
yeah,
And I would like to see, so many people interested in this, that it's a competitive process, but like, I do think we need to be wary of a budget limit and recognize that the people that score the highest are the ones who are awarded. Because if that's how any other grant process would be, there's a limitation, it's competitive, and the better that you, like, the more effort you put into your application, the better a chance you have to be awarded. And we choose the top however many, like we set a limit. I mean, maybe we work with council in the work session to determine what the limit is. Not that I want to limit how many people get it, but we can't award. I want 20 places to apply. We can't award 20
We
places.
sort of been budgetary, we've always budgeted 25,000.
Okay,
So, you know, basically 5 would be the max
right.
you'd be looking at.
Yeah. And I've noticed that it says up to $4,500 on the application. It used to be 5,000.
Unless you're one.
Yeah. I mean, my previous
No,
applications.
so it should have had another box, that says that they could apply for up to 5,000. It didn't have that option.
Okay,
well, and in the interest of also expanding to get as many applicants as possible, I think you want to also look at the eligibility, and it should be any property owner in whatever, in Cambria, in downtown, whatever whatever the case may be.
But we expanded the facade grant program
Right,
that's
to all
all,
business. Yeah.
yeah,
which I do think is still the right move. I mean, this is probably something that's good for work session, but
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about any property owner, so not just businesses. I'm talking about nonprofits, I'm talking
Yeah.
about, so.
Single family house.
Single, yeah. I mean, I think you need to make it as universal. If you own a property, then you are eligible.
I think if the property is located especially in the central business district, we want those facades improved, right? If the goal of the program is to improve the facades of downtown businesses and Cambria and older buildings in Christiansburg, then, I mean, I don't think, I don't want it to be a residential building, but like a business that owns that building, I think is eligible.
But what you said was single family homes.
There's technically a few single family homes in the central, even in the central business district.
But that's considered residential, so you're saying no to that.
I could be swayed. I just want to come back to the purpose of the grant. If the purpose is to beautify downtown in Cambria and also help the older buildings in Christiansburg, then how can we write this facade grant program so that it does that? And is it bad to exclude residences? I mean, maybe not. I guess I'm open for like a discussion about it. I don't know that I feel one way or the other yet right
I
now.
think it also depends on the historic value of the property too. You know,
And if we're focusing on like certain areas, if it's downtown in Cambria, because right now it's open to for all of Christiansburg. Probably the intent behind that was so that residents in a neighborhood wouldn't apply for a grant for their home.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking, the residents, like, there's the one residence downtown, right? There,
Well, if you look at the whole, I guess, of area that was previously mapped as the central business district, which went all the way over to Depot Street and to First Street.
right,
You know, you've got, there's the Dr. Smith House on West Main Street. As you go past the square on the left, it's kind of mid-block. There's that
Right.
White House.
next to the
Really,
bank.
really, yes,
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
bank building, that's a single family house.
That's the only one.
Well, you've got over on, Shelton Street, you've got a few single family, like behind the fire department and the library,
Okay.
in that area, you've got a few single family.
Okay.
Could it
So
be,
there's a few in there.
could it be phases? Like, the goal of the program is to grow and expand, and maybe if you wanted to go the route of residential properties in those areas, that could be a secondary phase after the priority is given to businesses and nonprofits.
And maybe if we're scoring these, we score downtown for-profit business as the highest and nonprofit business. We score, not necessarily that we need to score like one or the other lower, but you know what I'm saying? Like if our priority is the for-profit business, then it gets a higher score. Or if our priority is not the residences, but it's in downtown and we want to beautify downtown, then it just gets a lower score because it's not our priority, but it does align with the purpose of the grant. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think there's ways to reflect
I mean,
in the scoring.
and I think this is where all the other criteria comes into play of, what is the historic significance of the building? Where is it located? How visible is it? Right?
Mhm.
All of those things. Taking the priority of that assessment, basically, when we go to adjudicate.
And I'm also curious if council at the work session, something I'd like to bring up is, the 50-year minimum age of the building. If we want to go a little bit younger, I don't know what the shape of the buildings is, like 30 years. And
What was it before we changed? What was it before?
There wasn't a,
There wasn't
Village
one?
down by the district's fund,
Okay,
the
so it
Cambria,
didn't matter the age of the building
Right.
if it was in the district.
it had to have been either in Cambria or downtown as defined by that map.
Right.
The two maps show.
Okay.
Mhm. So maybe we just consider do we still need an age limit? And if so, is there some room for adjustment? Because a 40-year-old building could be in real need of facade update.
Right.
So. Guys, just talk outside of the room if you're gonna discuss. The whispering is really distracting. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else or any other things we want to keep in mind for the work session that we want to bring up to council?
Jana, to facade grant or
For that grant.
other?
Subway, I'm not sure who mentioned this, someone mentioned this, but I know that's a winner, right?
Right.
Was there? Is there any discussion on that? Like if you want that to be
I mean, that might be something like,
at the work session, I know it's like a privately or a franchise owner, right? So,
Yeah.
right, and that might be something to discuss. How is that different than a small business? In
Well,
terms of,
is this for small business? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, you're good, what'd you say?
Is it for small business?
Well, right.
Which you can do that, you can make that part of the criteria, the scoring criteria, if you wanna say,
Right.
friendly sized businesses might get a consideration.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I just want to keep in mind, I think the Subway is locally owned. Has a local owner.
Yeah, so I know that Subway usually has a local owner that,
Right.
because it is one of the franchise. And I know the owner of the actual building is local.
And do we currently ask for proof of ownership on buildings in the applications?
Well, we
Yeah,
do
the
ask them to list
signature.
the property owners just sign it, yeah.
Because that would be a great example of verifying that it's a local owner,
What-
rather
what
than
are
the
signature
corporation.
lines as to property?
right?
Mm-hmm.
I think but more in the signature, I think the proof of ownership might, help out in the event it is something like a Subway, but just to make sure. That way we can justify that, if that comes up as a question.
Mhm.
And if you all want to maybe look over the criteria of what type of work can be done with the grant. And see if those are things you want to continue. I know landscaping was brought up as something that they didn't really know if we want to continue with. And signage, I know we don't fund signage, unless it's the restoration of historic painted signage. So if you have ideas, you can send those to me.
And what about for the upcoming work session? Do you think that you all might have enough time to put just together a couple quick reminder slides of like what is on that eligibility or eligibility criteria, what is an allowed expense under the grant? Just a couple of like level setting things. So when we go talk about it with council, we just start with here's what's allowed and here's what the criteria are. And then we can talk about how we want to adjust from there.
Yeah.
So. Okay. What else? So action items, I guess, just thinking about the facade grant, we're gonna work on a timeline that increases the amount of time for the business owners to actually take care of their facade program or projects. And then we're gonna pull together the slide deck for the work session. There's a couple of items for communications and workshops and providing information about technical assistance. And then I guess based on what comes out of the work session, then we can update any of our priorities for the program. And that's going to help us determine our scoring mechanisms, and then any updates to the application. Right? That's everything. Okay. And then we can also just remind them that $25,000 is the current budget and ask if they want to make any changes to that. I think that'll give us really good direction. So in March, we can pull it all together.
So March is our goal to have it all together.
Yeah, and to be fair, that if that's too aggressive, I understand. We'll also, I guess, need to just work with whatever the timeline is. So at least by our March meeting, we're going to have a foundation of information to start with because council will have talked about these criteria and helped us make some decisions about what they'd like to see.
Okay.
And then I think then it's our job to come back and pull together a program that executes that.
So in March, we might be able to set some deadlines.
And then we can commit to whatever our timeline will be and then make sure we get the materials and then hit the ground and start advertising. Okay, anything else on facade grant program discussion? Timely that we're going to talk about it in the work session. I think that'll be good. Okay, all right. Any other items for the group?
One other thing, when we were brainstorming kind of the list of things for this group to talk about, I was curious the relationship with like DCI and what that's been like historically and how that will look moving forward, and if there are any other nonprofit groups that are downtown and or Cambria specific that the group would work with moving forward.
Well, can you give us any insight on what the partnership has or has not been with other like downtown groups like DCI in this community?
Has DCI ever been to these meetings since you've been here?
One person, when the first meeting that I came to, we walked downtown and kind of like took an inventory of what was available, what are things that could improve. And there was the one who the yoga,
Chris.
Oh, it's, yeah.
she came to that one. But then after that, no.
I think it makes sense for this group to connect with other downtown interested groups or Cambria interested groups. I don't know what that should look like right now.
Or maybe we start with Miles, looking more into what those connections look like and then maybe on an as needed basis, bringing them in. I don't know. I mean, there are a number of groups I think that could be relevant to some of the conversations we're having, but I don't know. Like DCI, for example, I don't know what their true status is right now.
Mhm.
But that's a great, like, in terms of communications, right, Miles, that's a great thing for you to, sort of bring back and say, okay, well, here's where they're at, and here's maybe how we can work together as a committee. I don't know if that's seen on a regular basis, but Miles might help us inform with that conversation.
And there are probably some connections to make if we're interested in doing something like the Main Street program.
Mhm.
We can't. ACI doesn't owe it to us to let us like have oversight of their program. But if we're going to try to pursue something like the Main Street program, I know we need to establish some connections and some partnerships, and we need to make sure that like they're taking care of all the things that they need to take care of in order to be eligible for those things. So I think there's some sort of opportunity there, but I just don't know what it is yet.
Would you all feel comfortable with Miles sort of initiating a conversation with DCI specifically, just to kind of see what's going on, where they're at, and then kind of bringing that back next meeting, and then we can talk about it a little further, and maybe this is just sort of an ongoing, like we said
Yeah.
before, conversation to see how this committee specifically works with other nonprofits. Is there anyone else besides DCI that you all know of, or Randy you know of? There's no one I know of.
I guess you could say the Chamber of Commerce is, interested in all businesses in town. We don't have anything like the Blacksburg Partnership per se.
Sure.
It's not like a business association.
Or like a Cambria specific.
I guess, no, there's nothing Cambria specific that I know of, let's just say like church groups or something. I guess countywide, Home Builders Association is a countywide organization. But, like I say, I think outside of the DCI and the chamber, that's probably it.
I mean, I do think it makes sense for this committee to have a piece of, or like have a part of, the Main Street program,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, so I think that's a good, to our original conversation of that running list, Main Street program should just be another tracking item.
So on that list, I have art and beautification, farmers market structure, facade grant, Launch Christiansburg, generating businesses downtown, passenger rail, special events committee, MC 250, comprehensive plan, placemaking plan, Main Street. Did I miss anything?
I think that's a lot.
Solving the world's problems.
Mural.
See, I'm sorry,
Mural,
mural, okay.
the
That just means
Public Arts Advisory.
Public Arts Advisory Board.
there are a lot of opportunities for this committee to do stuff in
Yeah,
downtown. So
right.
if we can organize these into some specific targeted goals and thoughts, and just keep a pulse on what's happening, I think we can do some good stuff.
Do you need anything for public arts for the mural conversation before our next meeting?
We just need to circle back with property.
On hold.
More discussion to be had there. I do think, we talk all about downtown, and obviously I know Cambria has been something we've, in recent years added to the mix, but like, particularly with passenger rail, I just would love for us to make sure we, I don't know if we have, like, what's his name, Ken Vaughn at the bookstore, across from the depot, if you have like a Cambria champion that can also, which Miles, you can be directly involved in that as well, right? Just to have like an ear to the ground on what's happening with development and the ripples around the station. So I know Cambria, I would love for this committee to also have a very close eye on.
Do we have a representative from the Cambria area who's on the facade grant committee? I think we can
That's a
invite
good
him
idea.
to-
Yeah,
you know
I
what
think he would do it too.
I think that would be
Yeah.
nice. I don't have a relationship, but maybe we can invite him.
I don't. Is that, the owner of the NRV, what is it, New River Valley,
Old
Old
River
book?
Books.
Yeah, that's right.
Heather,
Heather Bond, right? Isn't it a couple?
can't think of the last name, right? But it's the two of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have both their contact
And
info.
they've been really community minded from what I've seen, so
They
they
are.
might, absolutely want to be more involved in something like this, particularly when it's happening right outside their front window.
Mhm.
So,
And as far as the facade selection committee, I don't know if it's changed every year, but, I know that so Paula Austin was on it, and Stacy Martin and Ashley Phil. So I don't know if that'll be something you wanna continue on with that group of people, if they're willing, or if you want to come up with a new set.
I'd love to see if they are willing to come back and add a couple more people, in potential from Cambria, and, you know, just make it a little more well-rounded, but those three were great.
Yeah, if they're willing, that'd be great.
Mhm.
Bless you. All right. Okay, so I think at least for this committee, our big thing we need to settle is the facade grant program. Work session is gonna help a lot with that. Then, once the facade grant program is settled, the materials look good and we're ready to roll that out, then I think it's just looking at this list and choosing what's the next focus for us.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, well, then we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
For what's the bullshit, that was up there.
As long as you do it quietly, that's fine.
Like Casey,
Yes, sir.
You're the one who came up.
$4,500, by the way, was